All right. Hey, everybody. This is Noah with Learn Meta Analysis. What we are doing today is we are going to build you an absolutely custom website for your academic everything, basically an academic website for yourself. And there's a ton of sites that do this. You can do this very, very simply. But the unique thing about using this template that I've made is, as you can see, we're going to automatically pull things in from Google Scholar. So we're going to pull our citations, our number of publications, our H-index, and we're actually even going to pull in the actual studies. So we have links to the papers themselves, and we have a toggle to show the abstract. The main page is going to have 3. We can change this to however many you want. And then when we click on the CV page, we'll have the full list of however many. I think I have like 80, so this is going to take forever if I keep scrolling through there, so I'm not going to do that. But as you can see, it is a pretty nice site, I think. It's responsive, so if you make it smaller or larger, it's going to scale. Everything's going to work exactly as you would expect a modern website to. So we are going to go through and talk about how to build this with absolutely no knowledge. Now, one of the things that I want to mention, I am doing this as an absolutely rough cut video. What I mean by that is you can probably hear my dogs barking in the background. You'll probably hear the AC unit click on. You're gonna hear all those things. I'm not really going to do any editing to this video. I'm also doing this all in one go. The reason I'm doing this all the way from start to finish is I want you to see, number one, how long it takes, because I am not a programmer. Like, I'm gonna say that right now. I am not a programmer. I am just a typical academic nerd who likes enough programming to be willing to figure it out to build something like this. The second thing I'm going to mention, I did not build this completely from scratch myself, okay? How did I do this? I don't know JavaScript. I don't know Python. I know very limited HTML from when I started building websites back in like 2002, but I haven't really done anything since then. So I use Claude to help me build this website, and then I know just enough coding to help me edit things. And honestly, that's what I'm expecting you guys are going to be able to do too, because we're going to walk through all of these different stages. We're going to get you comfortable with these different types of code, looking at what each section does and understanding it, so that way when you get your website up and running, you're going to know how you can change it into the future. Now, the nice thing about this site is, other than changing like where you work or something like that, all your Google stuff, your Google Scholar stuff is just going to update automatically. So in theory, you shouldn't have to update this hardly ever, except for if you get a new job or you want to change your description or something like that. So that said, I'm going into this as if you guys know nothing. We are going to start completely from scratch. We're going to create an account with GitHub. We're going to download GitHub Desktop. We're going to download Visual Studio Code. And we are going to go through this absolutely start to finish. And as I mentioned, this is going to be a rough cut. So you're going to see what things I don't remember from when I set this up last time. But I want you guys to see that so that you can understand, like, yes, I built this website. But at the same time, I don't remember every single tiny detail, right? I did this in one day. So what are my tips for success as we start this process? Number one, just chill. Everything we're building on this website, this is supposed to be a fun process. So if you start to get frustrated, just pause the video, walk away for a little bit, right? And come back. The second thing is, at least for me, the way I would use this video, I would use this video to get my basic understanding, and then when I code, I like to absolutely blast music. I don't know about you guys, but it helps me kind of get into a flow state, and it helps me not get frustrated when I get stuck on things. But I don't really anticipate any of that. So I honestly am going to try and make this as absolutely simple as possible for you guys. If I miss anything, of course, leave questions in the comments section, and I'm going to leave some of the critical links here in the comments section too. So by the end of this video, we are going to have your own website set up as whatever your GitHub username is, .github.io. So that said, let's go ahead and get started, okay? So the first thing that you're going to need to do is you're going to need to go to github.com and create an account. It's not going to look just like this when you log in, because as you can see, I'm already logged in. You can see my little emblem up here. So go ahead and create an account on GitHub. It's probably going to require you to do two-factor authentication, but go ahead and get that set up. So once you have your GitHub account set up, I should mention, this should be free, okay? You don't need a paid version or anything like that to get what we're doing today to work. You can use the free version. I'm using the free version. I don't really like paying for things. So you can absolutely use the free version, and it's perfectly fine. The other thing that I'm going to mention, I don't know if they still do it or not. I think they do. But if you are a current student or teacher, they do have a way that you can verify that with them. And then I think that gets you access to GitHub Copilot, if I remember right, which is the AI assistant for helping you code. So I don't know that's 100% true. I would check on that if you're interested in potentially verifying. But otherwise, you guys can go ahead and pause the video here. You're just going to go to github.com and create a free account and then circle back here once that's done. All right. So hopefully by now you have your GitHub account and you've signed in. You go to your dashboard, it looks something like this, except over here on the repositories, it's probably not going to have anything. So the next thing that I would like you to do is download GitHub Desktop. Now, the site to get to this is just desktop.github.com. It's going to look something like this. And you can go ahead and download GitHub Desktop. This is just going to make it a little bit easier to work with this on your computer. So again, it was desktop.github.com, or as you can see in my address bar, that's just forwarding you to github.com/apps/desktop. And then you can, and of course, there's going to be a link in the description. So go ahead and download this, and we will go from there. Okay, so hopefully now you have GitHub all set up. The next thing that we are going to do is we are going to download Visual Studio Code. This is free and it looks scary, right? Like if you're not a coder, you look at this and you're like, I don't want to do coding. We're going to do coding. It's going to be okay. I promise it's going to be okay. So we can go to Visual Studio Code, which is code.visualstudio.com. I'll, of course, put the link in the description as well. And you're going to download this. This is going to automatically change, probably, I'm assuming anyway, if you're on a Mac or Linux or whatever you're using. But Visual Studio Code is the free version of Visual Studio. So we're going to go ahead and download that. And then once you have that downloaded, let me get that open on my screen here. I forgot to open that app up. Once you get that downloaded, over here on the left-hand side, there's this extensions button. Go ahead and click that. There's one extension that I really recommend that you use for when we're building this website, which is Live Preview. So if you click on extensions, again, that's over here on the left, and you just search for Live Preview, you'll see it comes up here, and it's created by Microsoft. It's the one with the little blue check, and it says Microsoft underneath of it. So you can see exactly what it looks like on my screen. So I like this live preview. What it's going to do is let us see our edits in real time when we are editing our HTML file. So consider downloading that. You don't have to by any means, but since it's made by Microsoft, I quite like it, and I found it quite helpful as I was creating this. Okay, so where are we at now? We have GitHub. We have GitHub Desktop, and we have Visual Studio Code. So we are now in a position where we can actually get this going and actually start working. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to my website template, which is here. As you can see, there's also a link in the description, so you don't have to go searching for this. And then over here on the right-hand side, you can see this Use Template button. So we're going to click that, and then we're going to click Create a New Repository. So we're going to do that. Okay, so here. It says create new repository. We're going to use this as a template. There's only one branch, so you don't have to worry about that. And then the owner, this is going to say your name instead of my name. And then repository name. So to some extent, this doesn't really matter because you can change it later. So what do I want to recommend that you do? You probably want the lowest stress way possible. So if you want this to appear as your username.github.io, what you will do is you will just put in your username again. So like for me, it would be noah-schrader.github.io. So that's what it would look like, okay? It would be your username.github.io. And you can see I already have a website there, so I can't do this. So I am just going to call mine example site. Okay, so that gets that set up. You can put in a description, you don't have to. And then if you're on the free account, well, you can choose public or private. If I remember right, you have to actually leave it as a public if you're on the free account to have it show up as GitHub pages. But that said, with the site that we're building right now, I don't think there's anything in there. I mean, mine's public. I don't think there's anything in the code that you wouldn't necessarily want public. And I have an MIT license on this, so yeah, it doesn't. I don't think it really matters that much, at least to the extent that I understand the code. So yeah, I'm just going to leave this as public so that it shows up on my GitHub pages. If you make it private, I don't think it's going to show up on GitHub pages, but I could be wrong about that. Okay, so I'm going to create example site, and I'm going to go down here. I'm going to put a little bit of a description for myself. I'm going to say example website for video, but you can call this whatever, or you can put whatever description you want. Then we're going to hit create. So you're probably sitting here thinking, why are you creating the repository on github.com if we just downloaded this on GitHub Desktop? And the reason is because I actually like creating repositories on github.com more than I like creating it on the desktop application. So that's why. Really not much else other than that. So you can see we use this as a template, and it automatically brought all this stuff in for us. So we're in really good shape here, okay? Please do note that it is going to bring the MIT license with it. So where are we at? We have all our files in GitHub, but none of these are on our computer yet, right? So I'm going to open GitHub Desktop here, and I'm going to show you what we're going to do. Okay, so I didn't think about this part before I started the video. I think you have to log in to GitHub Desktop in order to connect it to your online account. I don't remember that exactly because I haven't done that in forever, but I'm fairly certain you need to do that. So if you do, go ahead and get logged in. And you're going to end up at a page that I think looks somewhat like this. It might look a little bit different, but the important thing is where it says current repository, you're probably not going to have anything there quite yet because you don't have anything actually synced to your computer yet. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on File, and then we're going to click Clone. And what this is going to do is it's going to say, hey, GitHub, I want to take something that I have on the internet and bring it onto my computer. So we're going to click Clone Repository. And here you can see it's on github.com, and now we can choose which repository we want. So I named mine example site. So you can see it's got my local path down here, and I'm just going to click Clone. And what that's going to do is it's going to copy all those files from the internet onto my local computer. Okay, so what do we need to know about GitHub Desktop? There's a couple important buttons here. So the first one is current repository. This tells you where you are working, like which you can, okay, so I guess that's another thing. If you're not a programmer, right? If you're not a programmer and you see this word repository, you're like, what's that? I think about it as a folder because that's really all it is. It's just a folder with other folders within it. Okay, so whenever I see this, I'm like, what folder am I working in? I'm in example site, which is what I want. Branch. So what are branches? Honestly, you don't really need to worry about branches for what we're doing here. I don't even really want to get into it because I feel like it risks confusing you over something that's totally unimportant for what we're doing. For what we're doing right now, main is fine. Okay, what about this fetch and push stuff? This is important. So the first thing that I'm going to do is it says when we say fetch origin, what that means is it's saying, hey, should we look at github.com and see if there's anything there that isn't on your computer? And fun fact, there will be eventually. So what we want to do is we want to first fetch. So we're going to click this. It's going to check, and it says, hey, there's nothing new. If there was something new, you'd get a pop-up here, usually over in this area, that says pull origin. It might actually come up here at the top too. So if there are changed files on the internet that are not on your local computer, depending upon what they are, for what we're doing here, we're going to want to do it. We're going to want to actually pull it once we make these changes. So basically fetch checks to see if there's any changes on the internet. Pull will then update your computer with what's there. When we make changes to files, we have two different things. We have what's called a commit, which is what we're going to do in a little bit. And that says, hey, I want to make this change. And then we also have what's called a push. And that's the second step where it actually pushes it to the internet to make the change on GitHub. I know that sounds kind of confusing, but as we start this workflow of actually working on things, I promise you it's going to make more sense. So just know we're going to do some fetching, we're going to do some pulling, we're going to do some committing, and we're going to do some pushing. All of those things are part of this process of building our website. So I promise we are almost to the code, but you guys are doing great. Okay, we got this far. We are very, very close to actually editing. So here's what we are going to do next. I think what we're going to do next is we're going to look at the file structure. Okay, so let's go ahead here, and in this middle one, you can see view the files of the repo in Explorer. So I'm going to click that, and it opened on my other screen, so let me drag that over here. Okay, so here you're going to see a couple different folders and a couple different files, and I want to explain what each one is so that way you know. And if I say, hey, we're going to open this, you don't look at me. Well, you can't look at me because it's a video. My phone just dinged. Sorry. Go ahead and hit like if you accidentally checked your phone. I'll put mine on vibrate so that it doesn't do that anymore. Okay, so let's take a look at this Folder structure. Okay, so first one we have is .github. This is going to hold our programming scripts. So this has a Python file and it has a YAML file. Let's take a look at the folder structure. Okay, so we have scripts and workflows. Okay, we'll look at scripts first. And this is our update Google Scholar script, and you can see this is a Python file. Okay, we're going to get into that later. When we look at workflows, we have update Scholar as a YAML file. Okay, and this is basically going to say, hey, GitHub, I want you to go retrieve this information for me. So we're going to say, I want you to run the Python script so that that information can get retrieved, and we're going to get more into what that's actually doing in a little bit. Okay, assets. We have a data file, and we have .getkeep, and we have Google Scholar stats. Don't worry about those right now. We're going to get into that. We have our CSS folder with our style sheet. We're going to get into that too, but this basically tells the web page how it's supposed to look. Then we have our JS file. This is our JavaScript file. This is kind of, I like to think of my JavaScript file as probably not the accurate description at all, but I like to think of this as like the command center that tells everything else what to do. And then I like to think of the HTML file as like the face of it. So you can think of the JavaScript as like the boss, and then like the HTML as like the minions, right? So like at work, if you have a boss and they're always telling you what to do, and you know, you're the one who does all the work and everything, but the boss is kind of driving the show, and then you're just kind of the face of it. You know, the HTML file is kind of like you in that sense. The HTML file is really the face, and the JavaScript is what's happening behind the scenes, and the style sheet is kind of telling everything how to look. It's kind of like the branding or marketing department. That's how, I don't know, I just came up with that whole thing on the spot, but I kind of like it now that I'm talking about it. All right, let me get some water here, and then we'll get into these different files. Okay, so first thing that we're going to do is let's start with the index page. Okay, we'll start with the HTML first, and we will go from there. So what I like to do is right click, open with Visual Studio Code. And the reason is because if you don't do that and you just double click on it, it's going to open it in your web browser, and it's going to look something like this, which is, I mean, it's not completely useless to us, let's be honest. This is pretty good for having done absolutely nothing so far. But it's not customized, and we want this to be customized. Okay? All right, so go back into Explorer here, and I'm going to right click on index. I'm going to open with Microsoft Visual Studio Code. Actually, you know what? Even before we do this, I know what the first thing is that you guys want to do, right? You want to know how to keep Google Scholar automatically updated so that you don't have to ever do it again, right? That's probably why you're watching this video in the first place, is to find out, how do I get this to work on my website? So let's start with our Python file, actually. So we'll go to GitHub, then we'll go to scripts, and then we have this update Scholar. So I'm going to open this again with Visual Studio Code. Okay, so up here at the top, you see this restricted mode is intended for safe code browsing, blah, 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 blah. So I have this set up on my computer, so this comes up anytime I open a new repo. I think it's like that by default. So I need to go to manage, and I know this is my own depot, right? My own repo, right? So like this is on my computer, it's coming from GitHub. Assuming that you actually trust my code, then what you would want to do is click over here on trust, or you can just simply add the folder. Because I do trust my own code, I'm going to add the folder, and when I do that, you can see it comes up with this folder structure. So I am actually going to backtrack. So okay, how to explain this, what it just did. So what it just did is it brought up the one that I approved last time. So you can see it's like you can see that it is like GitHub website .github scripts, but instead we want to go here in to GitHub, and then we want to choose example site because that's the one I'm actually building right now. Okay, and then I'm going to hit trust, and now it's going to trust everything in this repo that we are working on. So I'm also going to move over here and hit trust. Okay, so now it has it so that we can edit this. Okay, how do we want to do this? Okay, let's walk through what's happening first, and then we will edit it. So let's start at the top. Up here, we are saying from Scholarly, and this is a existing Python repo that somebody has built. We're going to import this actual script or function. I don't know what the proper term is. I'm thinking about it as a script. It's saying we're going to import some JSON stuff, sorry about these pop-ups. It's going to import the date and time, the OS, and the system. Okay, so now what we're going to do, and I'm going to describe this in common person language that I understand, because like I said, I am not a Python coder, okay? I had a large language model help me with all of this. I'm going to give you guys my understanding of what's happening here. And the reason is because I think that's probably going to help you understand it better than like if I were an expert in Python and I started using all the really super programming descriptions. So the way I like to think about this is we are now going to define a function. So we are going to define update Scholar stats. And I know it's a function in my brain because it has these open close parentheses here. So what it's going to try and do is it is going to try and check your author ID. It's going to search for it. And so you can see we need our Google Scholar ID. To retrieve, we go to our page and it's between the equals and signs in the URL. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to open my web browser and I'm going to go to Google Scholar and I'm going to click on my profile, and up here we can see we have our web address, right? But it says citations user equals, and then it has a number, right? So if we look at this number and we highlight it, it goes to the and sign. So we want everything before the and sign. So we want this W, like for me, we want this W dash LJ blah, blah, blah. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna cut that, and then I'm gonna close this window, and I'm gonna go back to Visual Studio Code. And here I'm just going to take all of this stuff between the dots, and I'm going to replace it with my Google Scholar ID, just like that. Okay, so I got that done. I'm gonna hit save, because I always hit save whenever I make changes, because I don't know, it's just what I do. I don't really have a good explanation for why I do that. It's just what I do. Okay, so here we are at author. It's going to say our author is this one. So basically up here, we're saying the author is search for the ID. And then down here, we're going to say author is whatever that was up above, which was me, because I put in my ID there. So that is actually all we have to change in this Python file. But I still want to explain everything else that's going on here so that you guys understand it. So next we're going to collect our statistics, okay? So we're going to say citations, and it's telling it where to look on Google Scholar. It's going to say cited by. Then we're going to say H-index. We're looking at our H-index. Pubs, it's going to look at our publication list. Last updated, this is something that we are doing. So what it's going to do is pull the system time and write that down. Recent publications is just another thing that we have going, and we're going to define that later. At least that's how I'm thinking about it. Probably not actually technically accurate to the code, but that's how I'm thinking about it. Okay, so here, what are we doing? Well, we're saying we want to get our publications, and we are going to sort them by publication year, and then we're going to do reverse. So the most recent are the newest. And then what it's going to do is enumerate this. So it's going to build out the list. Now we're going to try and get all the abstracts, because I wanted to have the abstracts displayed on my site. So this is just the code to do that. It's telling it where to look. So you want to look at the bib file, or you want to look at something labeled abstract, or it's going to look at something labeled summary. Then we're going to try and get the rest of the data. So the title, citation, blah, blah, blah. You really don't need to know this because it's going to happen automatically. Okay, so if there is a problem, it's going to print some of this on the screen. So it'll say like, this is going to appear in your JSON file that we'll see later. Okay, going through here, this is telling it where to write. So if you remember earlier, we had a file that was called, there's a folder called assets, and there was another folder called data, and then within that was a file called scholarstats.json. It's going to write all of this information automatically into that file, and then it's going to print on the screen successfully updated. And if there was an error, it'll print that. Okay, so that's kind of a high level non-technical run through of what this Python script is doing. Again, all you need to do is put in your Google Scholar code here, your user ID, and then hit save. And then we can close that and never touch it again. Okay, so now we're done with the Python script. So that was the main thing that you were probably concerned with, was how do we get that working? So let's go check it. And what I'm going to show you is this is not going to work right off the bat because we haven't actually run that script yet. So what we're going to do is we're going to navigate back here to our index file. We're going to open our index file with Visual Studio Code. Okay, so here we have this code, and we're going to walk through what every single thing is. But the first thing I want to do is, again, remind you, if you downloaded the extension for Live Preview, over here on the right, you see this little guy? It says Show Preview. We can click that. Ah, awesome. Look, and now we have our website right here without having to actually go to it. Oh, goodness. And it did work. Cool. Okay, so the reason this worked is because this JSON file already existed in our file structure. So I'm actually going to show you that real quick. You don't have to follow this step. Don't follow this step. It'll just be annoying for you. But I want to show you, I went to the wrong folder, why this is actually reading in this information right now. So if you open up this file, this JSON file, this is what is printed there. You can see it's already got all my information. So as you're building the site, even though you put in your code, it's going to put my information there until we actually run it on the web. Okay, when we run on the web, it'll update to yours because we have to run what's called a GitHub action to get this file to update. Okay, so the cool thing is, this is going to be showing up for you now in terms of these files. It's not going to necessarily actually have the citations, publications, and H-index, and it's not going to have sourced from Google Scholar yet, but it will at least have the rest of these things here. Okay, I forgot about that. That's such a cool thing. Okay, so now we're back at index. You can adjust this for if you want more code, you can just slide the viewport over. If you want more HTML, you can slide that over. Okay, so I like to have it so that my code takes up a little bit more than half. So let's take a look at what our HTML is. So we're going to start all the way at the top. So we're telling it is an HTML document. It's in English. And here we have the header. So in the header, we need to do a couple things. First, you can see it says your name, and then we look over here, it says your name. So this is where we can put the title of the website. So I am going to put John Smith website. Actually, no, I'm not, because this has my Google Scholar stat still. Noah Schrader demo is what I'm going to put. And then I'm going to click off of it. And over here, I'm going to click refresh. And we will come to that later. So what this is doing, if I remember correctly, is this is actually setting the title like up here, right? So you can see if you look in the tab, initially when I started saying this, I thought it was going to show up right here, but I was wrong because I misremembered and, you know, I'm human. So if we look up here at the tab, this title is for our tab title. So you can see it says Noah Schrader demo up here. So now we're going to scroll down. It's going to have some links. This is telling it where to get the style sheet. This is telling it where to get some other style sheets. These are actually not in our repo. So if you look, this is Font Awesome. This is just some free to use fonts and things. And then it's saying, hey, for a regular style sheet, we want to grab that from here. Okay, so, and this CSS/style.css, this is your actual style sheet. So we are going to use that. Well, we'll get into what that looks like here in a few minutes. Okay, so other than that, that's really all you need to change in this header section or head section is just whatever you want the tab title to be. So if you want this to, you know, this could say like Magic Blue Frog for all I care. But whatever you want your title to be, that's where that should go. Now we're going to scroll down into the body, and this is what we are actually going to be able to see on the page itself. Okay, so we can see that we have a nav bar. It says nav ID equals nav bar. So this is actually, this nav bar piece is referencing our CSS file. And so over here, I just want you to remember that, okay, that like whenever we see ID, this is referencing our CSS. So the other thing that this is useful for is trying to figure out what you're actually working on as you start going through these things. But nav bar is relatively self-explanatory. That's our navigation bar. That's over here, right? So, okay, first thing that we want to do is we have our ahref. Ahref in HTML language means this is going to be a link. And I like, well, let me go to the end of this first, okay? We're actually going to start at the end here. You can see it says your name. And if we look over here on the right, it says your name. So in our navigation bar, what do we want this to say? I want this to say, you can see it updating in real time now. I want this to say Noah Schrader demo. And now that's there. Okay, look, Noah Schrader demo, and all I did was type that in. That's why live preview is so cool, because you can actually see what you're changing in real time, and I absolutely love that. I'm really, really thankful that I learned about that extension, because it makes this so much easier to edit. Okay, so what do we want to happen if we click on that? If we click on my name or on Noah Schrader demo, I want it to go to my main page, and my main page is index.html, which is why over here on that href part, we can just put index.html, and it's already there, so you don't really have to worry about that. There's nothing that's going to change here. The only thing that you need to change is right here for what you want, what your name is, or whatever you want your site to read as. Okay. Div class with hamburger, that's just saying to make this little hamburger menu come up if this becomes too small. So if you look, it's not there now. It is there now. So depending upon the size of the screen, it'll automatically go to that hamburger style layout. Okay, so now let's talk about our links. This is something that you probably are going to want to change. So the first one says research, right? And you can see it says research here. Then, so let's talk about this explanation first. So earlier we said Ahref means a link, right? And so you're probably wondering, well, this isn't linking to an HTML. Instead, it's linking to hashtag research. And that's because later on, you're going to see we actually called a section research. So if we go over here and we click on research, it's going to scroll down to research focus, okay? And so we can, what this means, like how this actionably translates to you for generalizing this, is you can call sections different things, and you can go directly to that with links on your page by using the hashtag. So we'll get a little bit more into that later when we work on the CV page. But for now, we have this title that's research, and this corresponds to this main title over here. So if you want to change that, you can just change it right here. Then you can see we have UL class dropdown, and what that means is our dropdown menu. So you can see in the template we have research focus and recent publications, and over here in our HTML you can see that we have those two headings. So we have research focus and recent publications, and they are linked to spots in our HTML document. So if you want to extend this, all you got to do is highlight this. We're going to copy it. We're going to hit enter and paste. And I'm just going to change this to example. And then if we wanted to link it to somewhere different in the page, we can just change that right here. But you can see, so what I think I did is on my research dropdown, I added a third option and I called it example. And if we come over here, we can now see I have a third option and it is called example. So what that means is you can make this as long or as short as you want. If you want to get rid of these altogether, you can just come here and hit delete, and then it's going to look, it's just going to say the word research. See? And you can see that I broke these other things when I did that. I can get into why that happened later. So the reason that happened is because I left this in when I deleted. So I will show you another example where I delete these things properly. And now you can see that it is actually intact, and we don't have our drop downs anymore. Okay. So that is how we edit our first part of our menu. If we scroll down, we can see that we next have our next little list here, which is CV, which I just have as one link. It doesn't have a drop down. If you want a drop down here, you can use this first one as a template. So you can see we have UL class drop down, and we just want to scroll down and go all the way to this /UL. So what does this mean? And this is a pretty good HTML tip in general. We have to open and close things. So what I mean by that is, like, here we have LI and we have the less than sign, LI greater than sign. That means anything after this is going to fall within this style, this format, whatever this happens to be referring to at the time. This is going to be a list in my brain. So in this list, we have these things listed, and then we're going to close it. We always need to close it. So if you are like trying to get rid of this drop-down menu, you need to start at where the UL starts, and we need to end where the UL ends. We need to get rid of all of that together, or else it breaks it, as we saw earlier. So if we want to make a drop down for curriculum vitae, then what we will do is we'll start at the UL highlight, and we'll go all the way down to the close UL. We'll hit copy, go over here to the end of CV, we'll hit paste, and I'm just going to change this to test 1, test 2, and example 3 for fun. Okay, and now over here on the right, whoops, I left the page on accident. Okay, so let's refresh. Okay, so you can see it's not working, right? Why is this not working? Well, my best guess, and like I said, I did not do any prep for this. I am totally making this up on the spot. So my best guess of why this is not working right now is because it is not indented. So let's try indenting it. Nope, that didn't fix it either. So now let's do a little comparison of what we have going on here. So we have our list, and then we have our href, and we have our UL. Okay, that looks pretty good. And then we come down here, we have our drop down, we have test, okay. Oh, haha, I see the problem. Okay, do you see the problem? Do you see the inconsistency that I have between this and this? And the funny, ironic thing is, this is what I was just telling you guys about. That's why it's so annoying to me that I made this mistake. I forgot to close it, okay? So I'm gonna highlight this, and I'm just gonna bring it down here. And in theory, it should now work. In theory, anyway. Oh no, it's not working. Okay, why are you not working here? Oh, I see. It's because of this little feller. I do believe it's because of this little feller. So, remember I said it wasn't closed? I was referring to this one, but what I didn't realize at the time was it actually was closed. It was just closed in line. So here, we have this li, and then it also has this at the end. So let's just get rid of that. See what happens. Ta-da! It fixed it! Awesome! We did a thing! And it worked! So we're going to save it because it did a thing and it worked. Okay, so why am I including these errors in there? Mostly because I'm human, and at least I'm guessing that you're also human, and we make mistakes, so we just have to troubleshoot it, okay? We just have to troubleshoot it, and knowing some very basic HTML, this is like super basic. If we start something like this li function, we need to close it, and we need to close it in the proper space. And if we don't close it in the proper space, as I didn't, then it's not going to function right. Okay, so that's what we should be looking for as we're working through this if we find an error. So like if we copy paste this like we did, we need to make some minor edits to make it a little bit more consistent. And that's all we need to do. And I know that can be really, really frustrating, but that's why I jam out to music while I'm editing these things, right? I just blast music, whatever your favorite music is. I get that romping super loud in the background. I just go through and I start editing things. And for some reason, for me, when I make stupid little mistakes like that, where I forgot to close the list, it doesn't make me anywhere near as frustrated as if that didn't happen. So, okay, I'm gonna move on now. But what I mostly because I feel like a little bit like I'm rambling, but you can see how if you want to change your menu, you can just copy paste these things. If you want to add more onto the menu, you can just copy paste this. So I'm going to take this contact one and I'm going to add like 5 just for the point of explanation. Maybe I added 4, but you can see over here on the live preview, it just adds as many as you want it to add. So really easy to edit our menu. Now let's get into the body of the actual page. So over here on the left, you can see we have your name, your title, your organization, your catchphrase, whatever. So we're gonna just call this testing, and you can see it updates in real time. Here, your title, type in whatever you need to type in. I'm not gonna go through organization and catchphrase because I'm trusting that you guys are able to figure that out of what you wanna put there. So all you gotta do is type it in. All you gotta do is type it in. Okay, so next we have our, oh, I forgot something, I'm sorry. You can see it moves into header here. That's just our first section of the page, like the header of the page, the first section itself. And what we're going to do is we're putting in our header content, which is a class in our CSS file. We have some commands here for our JavaScript for how it's going to actually behave when we scroll and what it actually looks like. And then we typed in our information here. So next we need to actually put in our picture, whatever we want our picture to be. So what we're going to do is do our image file. So how do we do this? Well, to me, the easiest way to do this is to open up our repo or our folder, right, on our desktop here, and simply put the file in here somewhere. So what I tend to like to do is I like to put all my images in one folder. So I'm just going to create a new folder, and I'm going to call it images. I'm going to hit enter. Then I'm going to open that folder. And then I will put whatever images I want here. I'm going to move this to my other screen real quick so that I can go through my file structures and find some picture that will work. And then I will be right back with you guys. Oh yeah, I'm going to do that picture. I love that picture so much. Okay. Okay, so let's say you go find your picture and you copy it and you want to paste it and you can't remember where your information is. What you can do is you can go to repository on GitHub desktop, and then you can do show and explore, and it's going to bring that right back for you. See, just like this. So I'm going to open up my image folder, and I'm going to put my Goshawk image here. So I'm going to close this now, and I'm going to minimize GitHub desktop. Don't worry about all that stuff yelling at you on GitHub desktop. We're going to deal with that later. Okay, so now we're back to the image file. And here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say /image. Whoops, helps if I have my fingers in the right spot. Images / mine was called Goshawk, and I don't remember if it was actually a PNG or a JPEG. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my repository here again. I probably just should have left it open last time. Go to images. I'm going to look at my picture. I'm going to right click it and I'm going to say properties. It is a .png file. So I'm going to minimize that and I'm just going to say .png. Okay. So let me refresh. It doesn't seem to be showing up. I wonder why. Because I made a mistake. Because I'm human. Okay, so here's what we need to do. I put mine in the images folder. So I need to say images / whatever your picture name is. So for mine, it was goshawk.png. And fun fact, because I'm a bird nerd, this is not actually a goshawk. This is a ChatGPT creation. And it looks like a mixture of a northern goshawk and a peregrine falcon and a rainbow, and I just thought it was cool, and that's why I use it for everything, because I don't know, I like it. It's not what I had actually wanted ChatGPT to make, but it came out really cool, and I use it as my background now, just because I enjoy it. Okay, anyway, so here we have our file path. So if you created the folder like me, it'll just be images / whatever your file name is, and it should show up here in live preview. For alt, this is what you wanted to say if your image doesn't load. So I'm gonna say picture of bird, and I'm just going to break this so that you can see what happens. See where it says picture of bird? That's for if the text didn't show up. Okay. And then that's it. That's all we got to do for this first section. Oh, I forgot the contact button. Okay. So here we have this get in touch button. If you want to change the text there, you can just change it here. So it says contact me. And now it says contact me. And what it's going to be doing is it's going to throw you to whatever section you have linked here under Ahref, which in this case is actually the contact section. So with that said, why don't we dive into the actual content of the page itself, okay? So let me get a little water, a little drink real quick, and then we'll move into these sections. Okay. I know this is a long video, guys. I appreciate you bearing with me. So let's get this set up. What we are going to do now is we are going to look at a little bit of HTML stuff that helps us understand, and then we're going to edit our descriptions here. So the first thing that I want you to notice is we have this section ID, okay, and it's called research. If you remember, up here in our menu, we were telling it to link to different places, and we were using this hashtag, right? So you can see we have hashtag research. That is telling it where to go. And down here, we set the section ID as research so that it knows where to go. So if you make this magic blue frog, and then you go up here and you change this link to magic blue frog instead of research, it's going to link you to there. So this is an important component to keep in mind, because we're going to name our sections different things so that when we create links, it'll go directly to it. So this first one is already called research, and I want that because I wanted to talk about my research focus. So then where you're setting up a container, don't worry about that for now. We're using the H2 class, which is the level 2 heading, and it's going to say section title. That's something in our CSS. Oh my goodness, I'm realizing we haven't even gotten to the CSS and the YAML file yet. Okay, we are going to get there. I promise you we're going to get there. Okay, so this is referencing our CSS file. You know what? I actually just want to open up the CSS file now. We're going to look at that. So that way I don't have to actually go through it in depth later. I still will, but okay. So let's see, what was that one called? That's called section-title. So here we have a bunch of things, and like I said, the CSS is basically a style sheet. It's telling it how to look. So if I do Control F and I look for section title, you can see it comes to my section title here. It's saying, I want my font size to be this, I want this much of a margin at the bottom, I want this kind of text alignment, and I want this position. Okay, so this is really telling your page how to look. That's really what the CSS does. So I'm not going to go into any more of this, but if you want this to look different than it does over here, all you have to do is edit your CSS sheet, and we can work on that later. So here I have mine labeled research focus, but if we want to change that to research areas, maybe without a typo, then we can do that. And when we scroll down, it now says research areas instead. So then we are saying we want you to set up the research grid. Again, that's something in our CSS file. So the first item is over here on the left, and that currently says focus 1. We can say magic blue frogs. And when we scroll down, it's now going to say magic blue frogs. And then as our description, we're going to say something like frogs are cool animals, but they aren't birds. And now you can see it updated automatically. So you can just update each one of these items for what you want it to say. And if you want more of these items, all you have to do is highlight this whole section, this div, all the way to the closing div, copy. And I'm just going to paste a couple here. And look, now we have a grid of 6 rather than a grid of 3. And it's also responsive, so it'll make it wider. It'll distribute them throughout the page as you actually go larger or smaller depending upon the screen size. So now we have these different descriptors. I'm just going to change this to 4, 5, and 6 just so you can see how this works. Okay, wonderful. Save. Next, we're going to move down into publications. We don't have to do anything here. Remember, we set up our script already so that this is going to update automatically once we actually push it to GitHub and make that change. So first we have our section ID. We called this publications, and we have this linked up here in our menu. I'm not going to go back and show you that again, but it's there. If you want to change the title from recent publications to something else, you can do that by changing this little snippet of code here. We are telling it we want to use the Google Scholar stats. And for the format, we want to use stat box, just like this. So the first thing that's going to come up is citations, as you can see over here on the left. Then it's going to read in our publications. It's going to put that center, and then it's going to put our H index on the right, which is going to come up over here. Then at the bottom, you can see it says update time. I added in just this little snippet, data sourced from Google Scholar, so that way, like, if somebody questions it or something, like, I want it to be obvious this is automatically being loaded in. It's not me just like making stuff up. So data sourced from Google Scholar, it's going to last update, and it's going to pull that information from the Python script automatically. Well, it's going to pull it from the JSON file that the Python script is creating, but it's going to pull in that date and time automatically. So then what we are doing is we're going to move down into our publication list, okay? So we see this div class, publication-list. This is defined in our JavaScript and our CSS file. So this is telling it says here publications are going to be inserted by JavaScript. When we get to that part, when we talk about what the JavaScript is actually doing, I'm going to show you that. I'm going to show you how to edit it. So like if you want to have 4 publications listed instead of 3, or maybe only 1 instead of 3, I'm going to show you how to change that when we get to the JavaScript part. So we'll go down a little bit further, and it says your Google Scholar link. Okay, so we can do that. Let's open this up. I'm going to go back to scholar.google.com. I'm going to go to my profile, and then I'm just going to cut this link. And I'm going to go back to Visual Studio Code, and I'm going to paste it. And now that button's going to work. What we did was set up this button. Okay, so now our second button is for all publications, and you can see I have this over here on the right as well. It just says all publications. It's already listed as being linked to the CV page, so we should be okay there. If you want to change this, you're more than welcome to. You can just change it to like curriculum vitae. Whoops, helps if I spell things right. I'm just going to put CV. I'm tired today, so it's just going to say CV. And when we scroll down, you can see it now says CV instead of Google Scholar. And like, if you're like me, this really annoys me with these buttons being different sizes, so try adding some spaces. Oh, that didn't do anything. Okay. I was just curious. I'd never tried that before. But anyway, if you were wondering why my site says all publications instead of CV, that's why, because I don't like these different size buttons. I'm sure there's a way to add space here. I just don't know what it is off the top of my head. Okay. So let us scroll down just a bit more, and we have our contact information, okay? So here we have our section ID being called contact, and we have our class, again, saying section title. It's going to use fade up, and I have it labeled as let's connect. So like if you look, it says let's connect here. You can change that if you want to. Okay, then it's going to say contact grid because that's set up in our CSS file with our info. You can change this if you want. So as you can see, it says get in touch right now in this bigger font, and then you can have your description, which you can change both of these. So we'll say like, feel free to contact me. Okay, and if we scroll down, it now says feel free to contact me, and it's got these buttons for LinkedIn, GitHub, and email. So how to make these work? First of all, if you don't want it there, like let's say you want to get rid of your GitHub because you're not a programmer, you can just highlight this line, bam, delete. Now we don't have that anymore. If instead, I'm sorry. So first thing we need to do is put in our link, so our web address. So you do need to keep these, what are these called? Why can't I think of this word right now? Quotation marks. You do need to keep these quotation marks there, but you can just copy paste in your LinkedIn, and then for your email section, you're going to want to leave this mail to with the colon and put your email address just where it says email. You need to have this mail to part here, because what that'll do is it'll make it so when they click the button, it's going to automatically bring it up there, like if they're running Outlook on their computer or something like that, it'll automatically bring it up so that they can send an email. And that's pretty much all we have to do for that section. Down here, it's saying we're going to run our JavaScript file, so it knows where to get some of this information. And then down at the very bottom of the page, what do we got? So what we have is it's saying, hey, I want you to run the function Google Scholar Stats. Remember Python? It's going to say we want you to run that, and we're going to bring that in, and it's going to get the information. You can see fetch. It's going to get it from that JSON file that the Python script is running. So if there's an error, it's going to throw an error, but otherwise it's going to update these elements. You can see this little comment here, update your HTML elements. So it's going to update the citation count, the publication count, the h-index, and the last updated. It's going to do that automatically. Okay. Whew. All right, that gets us through this index page. So if I were you, what I would do is I would pause the video now, and I would get this page set up as I want my index page to look. That's just how I personally would do it, because it's fresh in my mind. So I'd get my menu set up as I want it to get set up. I'd get my different blocks set up with all the information. If you want to make it look different, we'll work on that, okay? We'll get to that CSS file. But for now, I would focus on just getting the text content in there, because once the text is there, we can manipulate it, and we can make it look however we want it to look. So I would say, go ahead and pause the video. Try and get your text in here that you want to have in there on your index page, your main landing page. And then we're going to move on, and we're going to look at the CV page next. So I'm going to take a drink of water, and you can go ahead and hit that pause button. And when you come back, we're going to work on that CV page. Whew, all right. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to close that. I'm going to go back to Explorer. I'm going to go back to my example site repo, and I'm going to open up my CV page with Visual Studio. Okay, so now you can see this is just an interesting little glitch that I want to show you, okay? It's not really a glitch, it's just like the way it is. So I opened up my CV page, but you can see over here on the right, it didn't actually change me in live preview to CV page. So what we can do is we can just click on it, and it's going to bring you here. Okay, so here we are. We have a whole nother HTML page to look at. It looks scary because there's a lot, but I promise you this one's not nearly as in-depth as the index page is, because now we know some of the basics, right? So up here at the top, we have the head section, which is your name. So again, that your name is referring to this over here on the left. So we're going to call this test site. Whoops. And I'm sorry, I made a mistake when I told you that. This, because it's in the head section, this is actually what we're naming our tab. So I'm going to just call this test CV. Sorry, I made that mistake last time too. Like I said, I am human. I make mistakes sometimes. So, okay, here we go. We have this set up. It says test CV, and we have this same code as before. Now we are moving into the next section, the body. This is the menu, right? So you can see it says nav bar. We have our first part here says your name. Again, this is the one over here on the left. So this is going to be, this is my main site, right? Like I like to keep this the same. I don't actually remember what I called it on my main site. So I'm just going to call this test website, but this would probably be your name, right? So like, I'm just going to click it here. Okay, I called this Noah Schrader demo. So that's what I'm going to call it on this page too for consistency. Noah Schrader demo. Okay, and now we have that there, and it's automatically, because of the way I have the template set up, it's automatically going to link to the main index page if somebody clicks that. Navigation links. So I'm going to be honest with you. I build all my navigation links on my index page, and then at the end, I come back in and just copy paste this section of code. So let me show you what that looks like. I am opening up my index page. So I'm going to scroll up to the top, and you can see I have nav ID navbar. And it starts with nav, so that means I need to look for that closing nav to be able to actually get that section. I'm just going to copy paste that. So I'm going to highlight it, copy it. I'm going to go back here, and here I have my nav bar ID. I'm just going to highlight that whole section. I'm going to hit paste, and bam, now it is identical. So that is how I get it to work. That's what I do. You don't have to do it that way, obviously. If you want a different menu on each page, you can change it, but I find that really annoying on websites when there's different menus on every page, especially when it's just a basic website like this. Like, I don't see any reason to have a different menu for every page. So I just build out my full menu on my index page and then copy paste it to the rest. Okay, so next you can see we're getting into our education section, which is here. So as we scroll down, first, let me mention this. I fully understand that all of you may not have PhDs or master's degrees, and that is perfectly fine. If you don't, you can just delete some of these sections, and these aren't special in any way. It's literally just labeled PhD because most people want to put their PhD at the top, and that's why I have it labeled PhD. So let's say, I'm going to say that we only have one degree, and that's fine. Even if we have no degrees, that's perfectly fine. There are very, very, very amazingly successful people who have no degrees, and it's such a cool story. I'm not going to rant about, I'm not going to go into that story. I know so many people who are like wildly successful with no college education whatsoever. Some of them don't even have high school education. It's so cool. I always find people's personal stories like really, really interesting. Okay, that's total rabbit hole. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. I'm going to focus on putting in this information. So we'll say we're just going to have one section for a degree because we don't want to list all three. So whatever our degree is, I'm going to say it's a PhD, and subject, I'm going to say education because that's what my PhD is in. University info. So I'm going to say University of Universities. You can type in whatever your university is, obviously. Helps if I spell things right. Okay. You can see it updated up here. Year, I'm just going to say 2024. Why not? And then we get to advisor info here. So if you have an advisor, it's really common to list, at least in my field, it's really common to list who your PhD or master's advisors are. Not so much in my field for like undergraduate degrees, but I'm just going to leave this as Professor X because it's kind of fun. Okay, then we move down to professional experience. That's our next one, right? So you can see it says experience section, and it says repeat experience item for each job. So let's say currently it's set up for 2 jobs, right? 1, 2. And you can see over here, experience item right here. And you can see that there's another one, experience item right here. So if we want to replicate this, all we need to do, highlight this whole section, Control C, or if you're on a Mac, Command C, hit enter, and then paste it. And now we have 3. Or if you want to only have 1, we just delete that. So the important thing here with this section is I know there's a lot of like these divs, right? So the main one that we are looking for is here. So this really cool thing about Visual Studio is as you click on these different items, you can see it's going to highlight the opening and closing brackets. So with this first one here for our experience item, when we click that, it's saying, hey, that's actually closed down here at the bottom. And so that's good for us. I'm just going to leave this as 1. But like I said, if you want more than 1, all you got to do is highlight this whole section, and then I like to go to the end and then hit enter, and then you can Control C, and you're going to get that second item in there. So you can see again, at least with the colors that I have set up here, the white font is what we can change. So it says job title. I'm going to say super cool employee. And then where I worked, I'm going to say a super cool university. All right, so you can see how that changes in real time, and then if we want to update the date, we can just do that here. I'm not going to go ahead and change that for the next 2 because I am assuming that you guys can figure out that since it's identical. Okay, now let's go down to publications. This is one of the things I like. This is the whole reason I built this website. So for those of you who maybe don't have a lot of publications yet, but you have started building your own professional website, as you get more publications, it is, at least for me, very, very, very annoying to have to go update multiple things because I typically have to update my curriculum vitae, and then I got to update like my yearly reporting for my job, and then I also was updating a website. Like, it's just so much. It's annoying. So I wanted my website to do it for me, so I never had to do it again. And that's the whole reason I built this website template, was so that I never had to update my website again for publications. Okay, so as before, this first section's all the same. You can see publication list right here. That corresponds to publication list here. So if you want to change something different, you can do that. Citations and pubs and H-index, that corresponds to these sections of code here. And this is just the same as it was on the first page. So I like this layout. I'm not going to change it, but I don't know. Maybe like especially if you speak a different language, you probably want to change citations to whatever that is in whatever your native language is. If you're applying for jobs that would be in that native language, then like this is where you could change that, right? So I don't speak any other languages good enough to actually change this. I'm sorry, I wish I did, but I do not. So I'm going to leave that there, but you know how to change these because we showed them on the previous page, and hopefully you're starting to understand how HTML works a little bit now. It's not too complicated, even though it looks scary. So like with the colors that I have here on my screen, if I want to change text on the page, it generally shows up as white, right? So I don't remember if these are default or if I set them up this way, but you can see that I definitely have very color coded things. So on mine with these colors, the white font is what lets me change what actually shows up on the screen. Okay, so that's all the same. We get down to this publication list and it's going to automatically do it again. Now what we need to do is we need to set up this. It says link to your Google Scholar page so that the button, oh, I had so many, I'm sorry. Hold on, I gotta scroll down. Again, we're dealing with this button, this Google Scholar button. That's what we're dealing with right now. We need the link to our Google Scholar page. So what I am going to do is I'm going to go back to the web and I'm going to go to scholar.google.com. I'm going to go to my profile. I'm going to cut this link and then I'm going to go back to Visual Studio and I am going to paste it in. Whoops. And it needs to be in quotes or it's not going to work. So now I'm going to test it just to make sure. Yay! Brought us to our website here. I'm going to scroll down. I'm going to click on Google Scholar. Yeah, and it worked. Perfect. Wonderful. Close that. Minimize that. Back to Visual Studio Code. Okay, so again, if you want to change the text on that button so it doesn't say Google Scholar, and this button can go anywhere, okay? You can make this button go absolutely anywhere you want because with Ahref, all you got to do is change this link to whatever you want. You can change this button to say, instead of Google Scholar, it can say whatever you want. You can say Magic Red Frog. I don't care. You can say whatever you want it to say. And let's say you want this button somewhere else. Then what you can do is you can just paste it and put it wherever you want on the page. You can see I have this command to center here because I didn't want this left aligned. I wanted it actually center aligned on the page, and that's why it's appearing in the center. But if you want it to be left, you can change this to left. And I think that should move it. Yeah, see, now it's left aligned instead of center aligned, but I don't like that. I like it in the center. It makes my brain happier if it's in the center, so I'm going to just leave it there. Okay, now we have the contact section. Again, I would just copy paste this from my index page if this were me. This whole contact section, I would build it once on my index page, and then I would just cut paste. So I'm not going to do that again because you guys know how to cut paste, I hope. But basically, starting at section ID contact all the way through end section, I would just cut paste that from my index page so that it matches. Leave this next part alone because it's referencing the JavaScript, and then leave this next part alone as well because it's looking for this Google Scholar stats function. The one thing I want to point out that's different down here is you can see here it's going to call functions, Google Scholar stats and update publications _ and those are different. Are we at a point where we can get into those now? Yeah, let's dive into the Java, okay? So we have our index page updated, we have our CV page updated, all of our HTML for our basic pages is updated. So let me just say this, if you want to add a new page, right? So if you want to add another page to your site, make it look like whatever, all you got to do is make a new HTML page. I like to start from my index page because it already has my contact information built and it already has my navigation bar built. So I would just copy paste my index page within the folder structure. I would just make a copy of this, I'd call it something else, and then in your nav bar menu up here at the top, here it is, here's our nav bar menu, you can just change it so that instead of linking here, instead of going to curriculum vitae, let's say I called that page contact, it would just be contact.html. So that's how we can build that out further. Oh, I'm realizing I might have forgot to explain how this works in our navigation bar. So in our navigation bar, I mentioned earlier, we have hashtag research, and that is linking us to a section of the page. So let me show you what that looks like. If we go here on our page and we click on research focus, I'm sorry, not research focus, recent publications. Okay. Sorry, my brain got confused for a second because it wasn't behaving as I was expecting it would, but now I remember why it's doing that. Okay, so here we are saying in our menu, we want this to connect to research, and when we click on recent publications, it's going to connect to publications. This is not necessarily going to work because these hashtags only reference this page itself. Okay, and I'm sorry I didn't mention this earlier. I forgot that when I copy paste the menu, I actually have to update this. So we copy pasted this from the main page. So what we can do here is if we want this to go to research focus on our main page, we would have to tell it which page that hashtag research is on, which is on index.html. And then we'll do hashtag research. So now when we're here, I'll click on research focus, it's going to automatically bring us to that. Okay, did you catch what I did? So we were on our CV page. We are editing our CV page, okay? So I'm going to go back to that over here in our viewer. We are editing the code for our CV page. If we want to reference something back on the index page, like my research focuses are on my index page, they're not here. So what I need to do is I need to say, look at index.html. Then I want you to go specifically to the research section. Okay, and so when I do that and I click on research focus, it brings me back to the index page and it scrolls down to my research areas that we built earlier. So for recent publications, here it's doing hashtag publications. And if I click on that, you'll see it's going to bring me here. But if I'm on the CV page and I click recent publications, it just scrolls down to publication list. Why is that? That is because I used very poor naming conventions. That's why that happened. Okay, so here it's linking to hashtag publications. So if I do Control F and I look for publications, there's too many of them listed on the page. That's going to be annoying to do Control F. I'm going to scroll down to where I know that is. Okay, here's my publication section. I was really dumb and I left this the same as what it is called on my index page, which is why that link worked as it did. So I'm actually going to call this _CV. So that way I know in my section ID, if I want to link to my publications on my CV, then what I do is I do publications _CV. So up here at the top. If I want this to link instead, and I'm not saying you should do this, I'm showing you examples so that you understand how this works, okay? So here, if I wanted recent publications, but instead I wanted that to be all publications. And again, we're only changing it on this one page. But if I want this to be all publications, I just changed it to _CV. And now what it'll do, oops, I'm already there, so it doesn't really help. There we go, all publications. And I click it and it'll scroll down to this section, okay? So that's how these work, is if you're on the same page that you're trying to link to, you can use the section ID to go to that section specifically. If it is on a different page, you have to put that HTML file first for it to reference and then tell it what section to go to by doing the hashtag and use the section. Hopefully that makes sense. If it doesn't make sense, please let me know in the comments and I'm happy to give a couple more examples. Okay, so we built our pages. I'm just going to save this, and next we are going to work on our JavaScript file. So let me open up this JavaScript file. I will say, I do not think you have to actually change anything in your JavaScript file, but there is something you might want to change. So here you can see this is relatively commented out. The green are the comments that tell you what things are, and they are at the top. So we are going to initialize our animations. We're going to do some scroll effects. This parallax effect for the header is not, it's optional. You don't need to use it, but it's there. Oops, there we go. Okay, so add active state to navigation links. This is just telling us what this should look like and everything and how it should behave. So like, for example, over here where it says super cool employee, if I highlight over it, you see how it kind of indents to show? Those are things that you can control with your JavaScript. So we have a fade effect for the header. Okay, here's the piece that I wanted to draw your attention to. Google Scholar Stats, okay? So it's going to get our data. Okay, so first, this is the first thing. I mentioned earlier there were two different functions. Update Google Scholar Stats and update publications. Okay, those are different things. So with this Google Scholar Stats, it's going to look at our JSON file, which is good, and it's going to grab these four things. It's going to grab our citations, publications, H-index, and last updated. That is these things here, this little section. These, so citations, publications, H-index, data sourced from, blah, blah, blah. That is what this script is doing. When we look down to update publications, this itself is the publication list on the index page, okay? So update publications on the index page if we scroll down, we can see it has 3. Why does it have only 3? The reason it has only 3 is because of this section right here. So it says use slice to get the first 3 publications, and it says slice 0/3. If you wanted this to be 2, you just change that to 2. See how it updated? Now it's only got 2. If you want to change this to 5, you change it to 5, and now it has 5. If you want to change it to 1, you just change it to 1. Okay, but I'm going to leave it as 3. But that is how you change this on your main page, where it's updating the most recent 3. You just look in your JavaScript file for update publications. It's going to say use slice to get 3, and then you change this 3, and you can change it to 5, 7, 44, whatever you want it to be. Don't have to change anything else here. Then when we scroll down, we have update publications _all. This is for our CV page, okay? Where if we go back to our CV, and you can see it's going to pull all of our publications in, this is the piece of script that's telling it to do that. So what's happening basically is our Python script is collecting all of the data from Google Scholar. It is writing it into a JSON file, this scholar_scripts.json, and that has all of the information for all your publications. Then we're using JavaScript to say, when we run this function on the main page, I only want 3. But when we run this function on the CV page, which is a different function because it's called update publications all, I want you to list all of them. So that's conceptually what's happening here. Okay, then we have our script for toggling the abstract, where we can turn that on and off. Oh, okay. I was like, why is this not showing the correct abstract here? And it's because this is an erratum, and that's why. So if we look at the others, it is showing the correct abstract. Okay, then we have the listener for the initializations. This is just saying it's basically listening for these different functions to be called, is my understanding. Then we have a few more things. So we have close the menu, smooth scrolling, update the statistics, and there's a loading animation that you can be used. Okay, so what do you need to change in this JavaScript file? Absolutely nothing. Okay, absolutely nothing. If you are happy with how the page currently looks. Like I said, I think the most common thing that people would want to change is this slice for the main page here. So again, this was under update publications. If you want to show 5 publications or 2 publications or 3 publications, whatever, you just change this number, and that's going to change how many are going to appear on your main page. So that's all you really need to know about your Java. No, don't save changes that I just made, please. Okay, so let me do a little bit of a mental debrief for myself here. So we've built our index page. We've built our CV page. We went through a Java page. We went through a Python page. Okay, so we have 2 pages left. We have our CSS file, and we have our YAML file. So why don't we talk about our CSS first, and then we'll talk about YAML last. So we're going to go to CSS, and we're going to open this style sheet again with Visual Studio Code. Okay. So here's our style sheet. I'm also going to open up my index page so I can show you how these things correspond to each other, because it'll make more sense if you're looking at both at the same time, okay? Okay, so let's start with, I'm going to go down to the research section. So I mentioned earlier, we called it research, and then we have division class. We're going to call it a container, and that's just, basically saying we're going to build a container that holds all this stuff. Then we have the H2 class. So the H2 class is our section title, is what we are using. So as I showed you before, if we want to change that, we want to change how it looks. I'm just going to search, and you can see we have a whole bunch of things labeled sections here. So we have section and section title. So let me go back to my demo page, and I'm going to show you what this looks like in real time. So if I want to change my section title from 2.5 rem is just a size, and we're going to leave the rem part there. Let's change it to 1. Look how small it became. Okay, I don't know why that made me laugh, but it did. Okay, so as you can see, absolutely everything in our page that was labeled as section title in our code has now changed size. So that was 1. Now just for laughs, I'm going to make it like 0.01, and it's going to be like, yeah, it's like invisible. Okay. Oh man, I'm such a nerd. Okay, now I'm going to change it to 5 just to show you the extremes. Now you can see this is much larger. So if you want to change all your titles, this is all you got to do, is you got to find this little section title section, and then you can change it. And it was 2.5 by default. So there are some other things here that you can get into. I don't really want to get into this too much, but if you really want to get into customization, there's all sorts of things you can put under each of these CSS. So like the margin bottom has to do with how much space is underneath of it. Text alignment, you can see this one's relatively straightforward because it's center. If you want it left aligned, you just type in left. Okay, that's enough of that. So what about like the research grid? Right, so we have this research grid here. If you want to change this, first and foremost, you can see we have its own section here. It's called research grid, and we have the display type is as a grid. We have some other commands here where we can change the gap between things and the margin. And then if we want to change the actual items, so like each one of these where it says magic blue frogs, frogs are cool, but they are birds. If we want to change that, what we can do is just change this research item one. So like, let's see what we might want to change. Okay. Let's do some border radius because that's easy. So you can see right now it's 20 pixels. What if we make it 200 pixels? Look, it's really hard to see because of the colors on my monitor. Maybe it shows up better on yours. But you can see now they're like rounded, like almost like a pill shape as compared to before. They're just rounded at the corners. So like you can change things like that. You can change the box shadow, the colors of the shadow. You can change the transitions. You can basically, okay. Sorry, getting my brain in mode here so I don't ramble forever because I see, this video is already over an hour long and I'm sorry. Long story short, if you want to change something specific, all you have to do is look at what class you have. So like if I want to change the way research areas, like this title looks, all I'm going to do in my HTML is look for the class and it says H2 class section title. So I would just go into my CSS file, I would find section title and I would change it like we did earlier. If we go down here and like, let's say I want to change the way stat box looks. So I'll show you what I mean. So over here with my stat box where it says publications, right? So what I can see that my div class is called stat box. So I'm just going to copy that. I'm going to go to my style sheet. I'm going to hit Control F and I'm going to look for stat box. It's going to find it right here. Let's say I want to change this, right? So like I want to change the background color. So instead of white, it's red. That's all I got to do, right? I can change so many things about this just by looking at this style sheet because that's what it is. That's literally what it is. It just, the CSS tells it how to look. And I'm going to tell you what I do. So if I want something to look a certain way and I don't know how to do that, I will go to whatever my favorite LLM is and I will say something like, I think I have my Perplexity add-on here. Yeah, so like I have my Perplexity add-on. So I'll say, I have this CSS code below. Can you help me change it? And I'm just going to try and change the border radius. Can you help me change it so the corners are sharp instead of rounded? And then I will copy paste my code. And it says certainly, and then it'll give you the code to do it. Okay, so like you can just copy paste this in there. It's gonna work, or at least it's probably gonna work. Large language models aren't perfect, but this will at least give you an idea of how to change things. And like you can see, one of the things I like about Perplexity, a number of other ones do this too, is it tells you with a comment what is actually making the change that you want to change. So it says border radius 0, and then it says this makes the corner sharp. And so if you want to edit your CSS, but you don't know how, this is an area where I found large language models to be really, really helpful because I can just describe what I want to happen and then it will do it for me. So like here, all I need to do if I want to make those corners sharp is change my border radius. And now you can see it is squares instead of rounded. And let's say I want to go the opposite direction and make it more circular. I'm going to try like 5,000. I have no idea what this will do. Okay, it just made it like the pill shape. I have no idea what this was. I'm just not going to save this change. Okay, so anyway, hopefully you understand the basics of how CSS works in relation to your HTML sheet. Again, to rehash, we're going to find whatever the class is for what we want to edit. So like in this case, we're working with StatBox. We're going to go to our CSS. We're going to find StatBox, and then we can change things here. And there are all sorts of options that fall under this. You do not have to stick with the ones that are listed here. You can get rid of these. You can add more. If you don't know CSS, then, and like I'm a good example of a person who doesn't know CSS. So what I would do is I would go to my favorite large language model and I would say, hey, I have this code. I want to change it so it looks like this. And then the large language models can a lot of times help you make it look, if it's not exactly what you wanted, it'll at least get you close enough where you can start conceptually understanding what those things are that you need to change to be able to make that work. Okay, so I'm going to close my style sheet. Oh, let me just check something. Okay, yeah, I'm going to close my style sheet. There's nothing else more I wanted to talk about here. Okay, the last thing that we have to do is go over a YAML file. And to get there, we're going to go to .github folder. Then we're going to go to workflows. Then we're going to go to Update Scholar, and we're going to open this again in Visual Studio Code. Now, this is an important piece, okay? So, like, what we are doing here is this is essentially setting up what's called a GitHub action or a GitHub workflow, okay? So this is going to be automated. This is something that's going to run without you having to do anything, okay? So that's what we're doing. You do want to be careful with this because you don't want to be running things that you don't know, right? So I'm going to give you a super high level overview of what this YAML file is doing to my understanding. So first and foremost, we are setting this up. We are naming it Google Scholar Stats. And what this code is going to do is this is going to retrieve your stats from Google Scholar automatically at a certain time each day. So this is currently set up to run once a day. And so what does that is this schedule cron. And I do not remember the exact formula for this. You can find out what the cron formula is, but like you can change this so it runs as frequently or as infrequently as you want. One thing I do not know is I do not know how much you can run this before Google Scholar will flag you as like a bot or something like that. I've been running it as once a day at midnight. I think it runs once a day around midnight and largely haven't had any problems. I did have one day where it didn't read in my abstracts properly, but then you see how it says workflow dispatch? That makes it so that you can manually run this as well. And I just went in and manually ran it in GitHub. I'm going to show you how to do that. But I manually ran it in GitHub and it worked. So I think there must have just been some weird random error that happened the first time. So anyway, this has largely been running properly for me and when it's running once per day. So what it is going to do is it's going to run Ubuntu and is going to write some content, blah, blah, blah. It's going to set up the Python function. It's going to install the dependencies to be able to run Scholarly, which is that Python function that we were borrowing or using. It's saying, hey, where are we finding this script? And this is our Python script. And then what it's going to do is it's going to write this into the repo. It's going to update our file. So this is a very important file. You don't have to actually change anything in it. If you want to change something, like if you want to change how often it goes and pulls from Google Scholar, that's going to be this cron section here. But you should be really careful about that, and you should see, like I said, they might flag you as a bot, and yeah, you need to look up what the format is. I don't remember the format off the top of my head, but that's essentially what is happening here in this script. You can see here the main things in my brain. I'm gonna do a conceptual walkthrough of this. Is we're saying we want to run on Ubuntu. We want to be able, in terms of permissions, we want you to be able to write, and that is because we are going to write a script. We're going to write a file within our GitHub repo. We're going to set up Python. We're going to install the Scholarly function or library, whatever it's called. We're going to install that. Then we're going to actually run our script that we have. And then if there's a change to that file, we're going to actually put it into our repo. Okay, so that gets us through all of our files. We are so close to done, guys. I promise we are almost done setting up our website now. Okay, so I'm going to close Visual Studio Code. We don't need Visual Studio Code anymore. Now what we need to do is we need to go back to our GitHub desktop. And you can see we have all of this craziness here, right? It says all sorts of things. It says that we have an update to our Python script, because remember we put in my Google Scholar ID. Then it says we have updated the curriculum vitae page. Then it says we added an image. Remember, these are all things that we did. So you can see here it's saying in red what you deleted and in green what you added. So if you ever want to review your changes, you can do it here. Now, these only exist on your computer right now. So how do we get this to the web? First, we go down here into summary, and this is required. And I'm going to say initial update. That's just what I'm going to call it. And if you want to put a better description in for yourself, you can do that. Then what we're going to do is we're going to commit this to main. Okay, so what that did is it says, hey, I know I made all these changes. I actually want to make them in my files. And it's going to say, all right, are you sure do you want to actually like push that to the internet? Do you want to push this to your remote origin, which is the github.com website? And over here, you can see, do you want to push this commit to the origin? And I'm going to say push. That's going to put all my stuff onto the web instead of just my computer. Okay, so that's done. Now let's go back to the web. Okay, so I'm in example site. I'm going to refresh. Oh, look here. You see what's happening? Now it says initial update. And here it says initial update. This is the most recent version. So what we can do if we just want to take a quick look at this is we can go to the HTML page, and I'm just going to click it. And you can see, look, it says Noah Schrader demo, Noah Schrader demo. So we know that this is the same as we have on our website. You don't actually have to change it. You can just, you can just see that it says it was updated here. So what do we need to do? We need to do two things now. One, we need to actually activate the web page. And two, we need to make sure our GitHub actions are going to work. Now, I'm going to give you the preface of, I haven't done this since I set up my website, so I'm going to just go from my best memory, and there's a very good chance I'll make a mistake. So let's see. First, we're going to go to settings. Then we are going to look here. It's called example site, preview, blah, blah, blah. I'm not worried about that stuff. Over here on the left, we're going to go down to pages. Okay, so source, it's going to say deploy from branch, which is good. And then on the branch, I'm going to change this to main because I only have the one. And then I'm going to hit save. Okay, cool. So now let's go to actions. And when we go up to actions here, you see it says pages, build, and deployment. So what this means is it is actually getting ready to build your website. So we're just going to let this run for a minute. You can see over here it says that it's currently queued, but I'm just going to leave this here. Oh, well, while this is running, I'm going to show you other things that are happening here. So it already knows that there's two different actions here, okay? So it says there's two. There's pages, build, and deploy to get your page online, and then there is the Google Scholar Stats. So the Google Scholar Stats we're going to fix after this because it's currently disabled. I'll show you that. So you can see it has an event trigger, and we are going to do that later. So this is now, you can see it now says in progress instead of queued. So we will just wait. And I'm going to actually wait here so that you can see how long this takes, because sometimes it takes a little longer than I would have expected. It takes like, I don't know, sometimes it takes like a minute. And I think in today's day and age, we're used to just everything happening instantly. Not everything happens instantly. It's going to be okay. All right. I'm just going to hit refresh because I'm impatient. Perfect. Okay, you can see we're done. So I built this as /example site. So let me show you how I would get there. I would do noah-schrader.github.io/example site. So whatever you called your repo would be this. But if you used your own name, like if you used this as your repo name, then you don't have to type in this example site part. So I'm gonna go to example site. I'm gonna hit enter. Look at what we got, guys. We got a website. And it's got our 6 things here, and it updated our citations. Oh yeah, your website is online. Okay, but what your website is not doing yet is pulling in your Google Scholar Stats instead of mine. So let's fix that, okay? So I'm just gonna leave that open in the background. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go down here to Google. We're still on our actions page at GitHub. We're gonna go to Google Scholar Stats. And what we are going to do is we are going to go here and we're gonna say run workflow. Okay, so, well, let me explain what I did since all I did was talk. So here it's recognizing that there's an YAML file, and that's what's making it come up here as update Google Scholar Stats. So what we can do over here on the right, we hit run workflow, and then we'll hit run workflow. And this is going to take a minute. So you can see it is still, it says it was successfully requested. We just got to be patient. Now it says it's going to run. So this is going to pull my stats again, right? Because I had put, in our example, I had put my Google Scholar page in there. I didn't put your Google Scholar page. But if you put your Google Scholar page and you have your user ID right, then this should be pulling your statistics right now, and we are going to update your website. I know for a fact on mine, this takes about 2 minutes to 3 minutes to run, just because there's about 80 citations that it needs to pull. So we're gonna let this run. I'm just clicking through things because I can't remember what they say. So, you know, just like to see. Got nothing better to do while we wait. So while we wait, I'm going to look up something that I put in the template because I don't remember. So you'll need to update the files, enable the pages, enable the stats workflow. Okay, cool. That's what I thought. So we're still just waiting. So in the meantime, I'm going to go to all workflows. It's still, you can see it's still running. We'll just be patient. Just be patient. Okay, so trying to think about something intelligent to talk about while we wait, but I really don't have anything. But hey, meta-analysis is cool. Don't you guys like meta-analysis? I'm going to be building some new meta-analysis tutorials after this. Not after this as in today, but after this as in after this tutorial. I built this website kind of on a whim last weekend because I was tired of updating websites and things for publications. And, you know, I'd been updating websites for like 10 years and I was just done with it. And I just wanted to learn some Python and some Java and some YAML and like learn how these things work together. And so it was a really fun process for that. But now that this is done, I really hope you guys find this helpful for building your own website and having it look professional. And like you can change literally anything in this website by just updating the CSS sheet. You can make it look however you want. So I think that's pretty cool. And I hope that you guys have enjoyed this process so far. I'm going to hit refresh here. Okay, it's still running. Like I said, it takes legitimately like 2 or 3 minutes to run just because there are so many publications on that page. But hey, I guess that's a good problem to have. You know, it's a good problem to have. Like I said, if you have less publications, it'll probably run much faster. When I had it only crawling 3, it was very, very quick. Okay. So look, now Google Scholar Stats is done. And the GitHub Pages bot is rebuilding our page for us. So let's refresh this here and just see what's going on. It's still in progress. So as we go here, when we refresh this, it should list your publications here and your publication information. If it doesn't, I want to show you what to do. Okay, so if it doesn't, actually I want to check something real quick. Okay, so if it is not working, I want you to go back to your code. Then I want you to go to Assets and Data. And then I want you to go to scholarstats.json. And I want you to look. If, like you can see, this is my information, right? So I currently have that many citations, this H-index, blah, blah, blah. If you're not seeing this here, if it's blank or if it says like not available, chances are you have an error in your Google Scholar ID. Okay? So again, what we need to do for a Google Scholar ID, we go to scholar.google.com, go to profile, and then up here at the top, it says $user equals, and then it has a number with an and sign, and probably got some more letters after that. You want what's after the equal sign and before the and sign. And to fix that, all you do is you cut that out and you copy paste it into your Python script. So, whoops, sorry, I just opened my email on accident. So if we go back to GitHub scripts and then we go to Python, I'm going to open this with Visual Studio Code. It's right here. This is the only thing you need to change, okay? It does need to be in these little marks. It does need to be inside that. So you just cut paste right there, save it. And then if you did have to make that change, you do need to go back to GitHub Desktop. It's going to say over here on the left, it's going to say a file change. Just put a little brief summary, hit commit, then push to main. Now, one thing I did want to show you guys. So I'm just updating the site. You can see it's still working. It pulled that. I'm going to close this now. And I'm going to go back to actions and just make sure it's not running a bunch of silliness. Okay, cool. So our actions are good. Our workflows are good. Everything should be good here. I'm going to go back to my code. Okay, so let me minimize this. So when you start working on your files, let's say you're doing this on different days and that workflow ran in the background in the meantime. You're going to want to fetch first. And what that's going to do is it's going to update your JSON file. So I'm going to hit fetch. And you can see, look, there's one commit. There's one thing it wants us to pull. And what that is in this case, is we updated that JSON file, right? We updated that file of all of our Google Scholar records. So we just want to pull that so our computer is the same. We're going to do that first, and now I go edit. So anytime I go to edit my website, the first thing I do is I open up GitHub Desktop. Okay, I make sure I'm in the right repository. I fetch the origin, and then I pull the origin so that all of my files are the same as what's on my website. And this is assuming your website's working properly. Okay, if your website is not working properly, you don't want to do that process. But assuming your website's working properly, then I like to fetch, I like to pull, and then I will click Show in Explorer down here. So that way I can go in and edit my files. And again, like I just right click on the file I want, and then I open it with Visual Studio Code. And then you have to you commit it to origin, and then you push it to the repo, and then it should run. So a couple other things I just want to go over real quick to help you troubleshoot in case you run into problems. I don't think you'll run into problems, but in case you run into problems, okay? So first thing that I want to point out is this GitHub Actions page. This is kind of important, okay? Because here, let's say your Google Scholar Stats was broken. It wasn't working. Like, let's say the first time that you did it, like maybe you had your user ID wrong or something like that, and the JSON file didn't get run. So what you can do is this automatically is going to run like once a day. But for testing purposes, if you need to run it just to see if it's working, you just go over here to Actions, you click on Google Scholar Stats, you go to Run Workflow, it's on the main branch, and you just click Run. It's going to tell you that it's been processed, and then it's going to come up down here. You'll see the yellow circle when it's processing and green when it's done again. In terms of your web pages, if you run into issues with your web page, I personally have not ran into any issues with the web page itself, but that would show up here with your workflow runs. So after you update it, it usually takes like maybe 2 or 3 minutes to actually complete this pages build before it'll show up on your page. So I guess the last thing that I want to show you guys, whoops, that's not what I wanted. Sorry, let me get back to our repo here. Example site. Okay, so currently my website is showing up as my username / example site, right? What if you don't want this example site? What if you just want this to be your username.github.io? What can you do? Well, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight this and I'm going to copy it. And then I'm going to close this. And then what we can do is we can go into our settings and see how it has repository name. Highlight it, copy in that instead. You can see for me it says it already exists, and that's because my real website is at that current address. But if you do that with your username and everything, then it will work, and it will show up just as your username.github.io instead of having to have a slash and then the repository name. Now, the next question you're probably wondering, how do you set this up as like your own .com or .org or whatever you want to do? You can very easily do that. GitHub has instructions to do that. I am not going to go over how to do that right now. Number one, because you generally have to pay for your .com or whatever, and I don't like to go over paid things. And number two, there are lots of things that you can do wrong in that process. GitHub talks about how to do it right, and I have not gone through that. So I haven't done it myself with setting it up through GitHub. So I would recommend that you go to the GitHub website and just simply search if you're interested in connecting it to your own .com. How do you do that properly? Okay, so that's everything, guys. We just built a website from scratch that automatically updates with all of our publications. I know this is a long video. I'm looking down at my recording now, and it's almost an hour and 40 minutes long. I hope you guys have found this really, really helpful. I know it's been helpful for me to run back through the code and explain through some of these pieces. I always like walking through code. It helps me learn it even better. So I hope this is helpful for you guys. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask in the comments, and I'll do my best to answer for you. Again, I am not a programmer. I created this with in a large language model. If you want to make edits to your CSS sheet, I found large language models help. They help me quite a bit with editing how the look and feel of my website. So please feel free to edit whatever you want to edit on your page. And yeah, I hope this is helpful. If this tutorial was helpful, guys, please help me grow the channel. Please please leave a comment. Please subscribe if you're not a subscriber already. Please feel free to tell your friends. Like I said, this repository is an open template, so anyone can use this. You can see here, like I said, there's going to be a link in the description for how to get to this template. Anyone can use it. Anyone can modify it. I hope that this helps you get a really cool website up and running. I'm going to stop rambling now. We'll have some more meta-analysis and systematic review content coming soon. Thank you guys, especially if you bared with me through this hour and 40-minute video. Thank you so much. The other thing, if you create a website, feel free to share it in the comments. I would love to see your guys' working websites, especially if you decide to play around with the CSS code and make it look differently. I love seeing different things that people build. So please feel free to put a link into the comments, and so other people can enjoy seeing your website too. So that said, enjoy website building, enjoy getting used to code without it being scary. I will see you all in the next video. Thank you.